Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Fit and fine.
So I see you're streaming it to YouTube. I will be interested in having a copy or access to a copy of the recording, if that's possible, afterwards, so I can edit out any mistakes.
Rupali ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
VC सर ज्वाइन नहीं ज्वाइन करेंगे, गेस्ट है उनके पास में. ठीक है.
Sir, shall we start?
Yes.
So, hello everyone, and a welcome to all. We are excited to have you join us for the 62nd webinar in the Pratiti-2024 series, Becoming Aware, hosted by the Center of Excellence in Gaming and Simulation at Sri Vaishnav Vidyapeeth Vishwavidyalaya, Indore, India. Today's webinar focuses on the topic, the impact of artificial intelligence on gamification and serious games. And we are honored to have Mr. David Wortley, Vice President of the International Society of Digital Medicine, ISDM, and founder and CEO of 360 in 360 Immersive Experiences, United Kingdom, and as our esteemed speaker. On behalf of the university, I would like to extend a heartfelt welcome to Mr. Wortley. Before we begin the session, let me take a moment to introduce our esteemed speaker. Mr. David Wortley is CEO and founder of 360 in 360 Immersive Experiences and a Vice President of the International Society of Digital Medicine. He is a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts and Commerce and a global thought leader and innovator on enabling technologies for health, education, and the environment. He is on the editorial board of the Digital Medicine Journal. He is an associate member of the Royal Society of Medicine and a visiting fellow at the faculty member of the Royal Society of Medicine and a visiting fellow at the Faculty of Health and Social Sciences at Bournemouth University. As the founding director of the Serious Games Institute, SGI, at Coventry University, his team established an international center of excellence for applied research and innovation in the field of serious games and immersive technologies for a wide range of applications. His area of special interest are technologies for preventive healthcare, collaboration, virtual reality, and interactive rich media knowledge sharing. He is a professional virtual event facilitator, webinar host, and publisher. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. David Godley to begin his session. Over to you, sir.
I'm sorry, do you want me to start?
Yes, sir. Please
Yes,
start the session.
I'm sorry, there is some noise in the background, and I just hope it won't disturb my presentation. But I will start sharing my screen now and just say thank you very much for the opportunity to make a presentation to you today. I've set my background of my behind me is meant to be an aerial view of London. It shows Tower Bridge, but the picture is actually not a real picture. It's a picture that's generated by AI. So, my name is David Wortley. I'm a fellow of the Royal Society of Commerce, and I'll just begin by just saying a little bit about me. I'm showing you two pictures on the screen now. One is a genuine photograph of me. It's what I normally use when I'm making presentations, but the other is an AI-generated picture of what I would look like possibly as a pirate. And I'm not sure which of those two pictures I actually. I'm the CEO and founder of 360 and 360 Immersive Experiences, and I suppose my credentials for talking to you today are really based around my time at the Serious Games Institute when I was heavily involved in setting up the Serious Games Institute at Coventry University. And so I spent a good number of years learning about and helping to promote the idea of serious games and also of gamification. And today, of course, AI is very important. It's affected many, many different areas. And I want to talk to you about what my opinions of the impact of AI on gamification and serious games. So that's a bit of background about me, and it shows you, I'm showing you now a picture of our launch event in 2007. So we're talking about 17 years ago, and this launch event, took place both in the metaverse, in Second Life, and you can see a picture of me on the screen in our virtual auditorium, but also virtually. I think it was probably one of the very first hybrid conferences that was delivered simultaneously in both the metaverse and in real life. I've already written a book which is largely based on the impact of AI on humanity, and it's based on my experiences of how technology has developed, and particularly AI, during my lifetime. So I was born in 1949, and technology, as you can imagine, has evolved enormously over that period. It's been one of the most disruptive and exponential changes in human history. And I think people of my age, baby boomers, are privileged to have lived through that period. I'm an early adopter of AI for creative content development, and I will show you some examples of that later on. So the structure behind my presentation today, and I think it's important to mention this, I don't make any apologies for it because I'm going to be spending a little bit of time talking about my theory on gamification and serious games. Because if you're going to be talking about the impact of AI, you need to, I think, understand the principles behind gamification and serious games and what factors AI can affect. So that will lead me on to talking about the impact of AI on creative industries in general, particularly about using AI for content development. I'm going to show you some of the latest examples of that, and then get on to really the meat of it. And I hope that this will stimulate some questions and discussion about how you use AI for engagement and motivation. I think this is where the use of AI is going to be have most effect. So to talk about gamification, well, what is gamification? I think there's a lot of misunderstanding and misinterpretation and misinformation about gamification. It's a very popular phrase, but in my view, and how I would describe it, it's the use of game psychology and game mechanics in a non-game context. And that's gamification in general. And the idea behind gamification is you use game psychology and game mechanics to achieve desired outcomes. So that's my definition. And I would argue that gamification and the ability and the motivation to gamify is embedded in the genetic makeup of every living creature. So from the time we are born, we use gamification as a way of learning about and manipulating the environment that we live in. So I show an example of a baby there. And from the time a baby is born, it learns about the world around it and tries to influence its world in ways like crying, for example. It explores the impact of crying on its parents and learns the effect of that. And so over a period of time, a baby will learn whether crying works or not and what happens when you cry. So babies use gamification as a way of both learning about the world around it, and also manipulating it. And of course, parents use gamification the same way to influence the behavior of their children and the education of their children. But it's not limited to human beings, I would argue. I would argue that it's also in every living creature. And an example of that, I show a picture of a dog with a dog bowl. Animals gamify human beings. They know by looking at a human being in a certain way, a dog's with holding their paw up. They learn the techniques which will influence the behavior of the human being and encourage it to deliver what it's looking for. So here's a gamification example, and it's from the film Mary Poppins. And Mary Poppins is about a nanny that comes into a household where the children are very unruly. They will not do as they're told. And so the nanny shows how by using gamification, she can influence the behavior of the children. So the example that I quote is when the children are refusing to take their medicine. And so she turns it into a game. And the game revolves around a song called The Spoonful of Sugar. And the spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down in the most delightful way. So she's using games and gamification to influence the behavior of the child and encourage it to take medicine. And there's other examples throughout the film of how she makes tasks that the children don't want to do interesting, introduces play and gamification techniques in achieving those outcomes. There are a number of concepts that I've written about and I put into a white paper on gamification theory and practice. And one of these concepts is the notion of the gamification lens. And the gamification lens is really something, it's a way of viewing not just games, but every example of human interaction. And I use the example of football because it's probably one of the easiest to explain what I'm talking about. And so the gamification lens is like a pyramid. And the pyramid shows a growing ability to influence outcomes, right from the bottom, the hermit, to the games master. And so each level has a profile or examples of profiles of people and their role in gamification and their ability to achieve the outcomes. At the top of that pyramid, I call it the games master. An example here in the field of football, but it can be applied to every human activity. A games master is a person who understands the game psychology and games mechanics and uses that knowledge to be able to influence outcomes. In other words, if you're talking about a football manager, he knows how to motivate the players, he knows what strategies to use, what tactics to use, and he is able to coach his players to get the best from them. So the games master, it could be the same in politics or any human endeavor. The person at the top of the pyramid is the person who really knows how to get results. The level underneath that, immediately underneath that, is the player. And the player is actually involved in the activity or the game. So in the case of football, it will be football players. And football players can also influence outcomes. And so they are motivated to develop their skills and ability and their self-esteem in order to win matches. But they don't have as much influence as the coach or the games master. So human beings try to improve their skill and ability to improve outcomes. And again, so in every human activity, there are the equivalent of players, people who are most directly involved in the activity. Underneath that level, but also very important, are the fans. A fan a profile of a fan is someone who maybe is not able to play the game or get involved in the game, but they are so passionate and interested in developing the outcomes that they can influence them. And fans actually are very important for the sustainability of a game because they give their time and their money and their energy to influence outcomes. Below that, there are spectators, and the spectators, they are not so passionate about a thing, but they do have a general interest and an awareness, so they will read the football results and they have a general knowledge, but they don't directly get involved in influencing outcomes. And at the bottom of the gamification lens is the hermit. And hermits are either unaware, they've got no interest in the activity that you're talking about, and so they have no influence at all on outcomes. And so when you're talking about gamification, you're talking about how you move people up that pyramid. So another way of describing gamification is to look at it from an engineering point of view, and this is my background. So you look at a situation, and it could be the situation that you're looking at is what we're talking about now. I am here in London. A scenario is that I am talking to you in India, and I want to achieve an outcome. And the outcome that I want to achieve is a greater understanding of gamification and of the factors, and an ability to develop the skills to influence your own outcomes, whether you're a teacher or whatever you are. If the knowledge that I'm able to give to you helps you to achieve your desired outcomes, then that is what my objective is. And the gamification engine, and this is where, unfortunately, the online presentations have limited feedback, or the feedback hopefully will come during the end. And so there are external factors which to do with the environment that we're using, your background, etc., that will influence the outcome. So the gamification cycle, which I believe applies to every single type of game, whether it's an entertainment game or whether it's a serious game, always takes this form. And it begins with a challenge. If you don't have a challenge, it's very difficult to engage someone and to deliver a desired outcome. And from that challenge, and the challenge, the response to that challenge is very personalized. So the same challenge will have a different effect on different people, but it generates a response. That response, it then leads to being able to measure the level of the response and provide feedback, which in that continuous and hopefully will continue to engage and motivate other people. And in my example, when I gamified my own health, my challenge was to start walking 10,000 steps every day. And I've been doing that for 11 years. So I started walking 10,000 steps every day. That was my response. I measured the effect of that on my lifestyle and saw that it was making some big improvements. The measurement that I took, and it comes from my wearable devices, allowed me to then understand, and it so provided a positive feedback and helped me to sustain my lifestyle activities. The next thing that I want to show you, and this is where AI starts to come in, and that is the gamification elements. And these elements will apply to every single game, whether it is a serious game or an entertainment game. If you look at games, they all have one or more or multiple examples of these elements. Now, a lot of games do begin with scenarios, stories, narratives that actually engage the user because the player can relate to them. They involve challenges. They involve rules, and rules are very important in setting the parameters by which people can play games. Chance and uncertainty are a fundamental component of games. If there's no chance and uncertainty, then there's no incentive to get involved in playing the game. And you can use rewards and incentives and so on. So these are the gamification elements. Also, there are gamification influencers. And the gamification influencers are factors which will affect whether a person is likely to get involved, and how they are going to be motivated. So if you use, for example, ability as an influencer, if you have some ability, then it will encourage you to take part in the game. If you have no ability, it will discourage you. If you have too much ability, it will also discourage you from taking part in a game. And so all of these influences play a part in whether a gamification is likely to be effective. And this is a point that I'm going to touch on really when we get on talking about the impact of AI on all of these things. So is gamification an art or a science? Well, there's two ways of looking at this. On the human aspect or the artistic aspect of it, it's a human ability to be able to understand human nature, to be able to personalize gamification approaches to individuals that is used by football coaches to win football matches. And that's definitely an art. Whereas also the other argument is that you can look at game theory mathematics to predict outcomes. In my own opinion, I think gamification is more of an art than a science. I think it very much depends on human capabilities and human understanding of players and scenarios that will affect outcomes. So, moving on to how AI can be used in gamification and serious games. First of all, to look at how you develop games. And I mean, I'm talking about not board games, I'm talking about online games, particularly, or games, console games. And going over the time I've been involved in serious games, the content, the graphical content and the appearance of the graphics is very important in helping to engage people, because it is what people see on the screen which interests them in the beginning. And so I show you some examples of how AI is being used to generate content. And this is an example of something developed by Blockade Labs. It's called Skybox AI, and it allows you to create the kinds of environments that are used in games much more productively. So here is an example of something I created using AI. I just asked a particular program called Artistly AI. It's a web-based program, which is a consumer item. You can use it on a mobile phone or on a desktop. And I said to Artistly AI, give me a picture of a modern classroom in India with a tutor interacting with an English virtual presenter on a large screen, engaged and smiling students, and an elderly Indian tutor facilitating the presentation. And what I was trying to do there was to generate a unique picture that kind of illustrated the situation that we're involved in. But the character that was generated for this purpose was generated by AI. So here are another couple of examples. And the first of these examples is using the Skybox AI to create a picture of Langkawi Beach at sunrise with beach huts. And this is the prompt that I gave AI, and I asked it to create an immersive environment based on just that simple statement. And I also asked AI to create a video. So the 360-degree environment that could be used within a video game or serious game context, it generated for me automatically. So it removed the need to have graphics artists and designers to be able to create that scenario. It just involved me describing what was required. And the other example that I wanted to show you is using another program called Talking Pictures. And the use of avatars and game characters obviously is important in video games, whether they are serious, but they are also used. And the problem with them, I'm just going to for a minute and just take it back. This is an example of a character that was generated by AI, and the latest generation of techniques allows me to create animation of the characters so that it's much more realistic. So this is an example. Play that. I'm not sure whether you can hear it or not. I can't hear it, unfortunately, but it actually is an avatar that's using my voice with some of the latest animation techniques that are used there. So going on to even later developments, only within the last few days, I got details of a development from a company called Tencent, based in China, and they've created a platform called Game Gen O, which is about creating AI-powered open world game generation. So, in other words, through the use of AI, you can not only create environments and characters, but you can also create scenarios, animations that go quite a long way to providing interactivity in a very high quality virtual environment. And the example that is shown, that you can look this up yourself. It's called Game Gen AI, and it was about using Game Gen O for a particular client application. And this client was a company that is already involved in virtual world. They have with millions of users, but they have a problem with the model being sustainable because it's too expensive to continue developing it. Well, Game Gen O was able to give them a platform that achieved the following things. It improved the productivity of development of the games. It means that the way the games work are really only limited by your imagination. They're not limited by creative skills, etc. I'm not sure why my slides are being advanced, but as I'm not doing it myself. It also democratizes the way games are developed, creates opportunities for personalization of games, and reduces costs and timescale. So now I realise that I've been talking for quite a while, but this is the meat of it, and it's important. I felt that it was important for you to understand some of the theory and practice of gamification to help understand how AI is going to impact gamification and serious games. I've gone through the way in which AI can be used, certainly with video games, to make the type of games you can use, whether entertainment or serious games, more effective and be able to develop them at a lower cost. But at the end of the day, the effectiveness of gamification and serious games depends on game psychology and games mechanics, and that is very personalized. And so the way in which AI is going to have the major impact is that it's able to understand from your online profile. Sorry, I am not advancing these slides, so I'm not sure why they're being advanced. So AI can identify which influencers are most likely to engage players based on their profile and behaviors. It can track players' response and adjust interactivity. It can measure the level of engagement and ingest feedback to reinforce engagement. So the main impact of AI, any kind of game, is the ability to personalize them to the individual. And that's really quite critical when you're trying to achieve outcomes from gamification. And this is another example of a case study about, again, this is very, very, very recent, only within the last few days, and it's about something called In-World, and it's how the use of AI helped a virtual world platform to become commercially viable. And what AI did for this platform was to impact the cost, the latency, in other words, the speed of response of interactivity, scalability, the ability to handle the number of users, the quality of the visual graphics, and localization, in other words, personalization. So this is, I think, where I believe that AI is going to have its major impact, and I'm primarily talking about video games here, is that it will help you to achieve all of these things. It will help you to develop games at a lower cost, higher quality, faster, more scalable, better graphics and quality, and more personalization. And in using AI in the classroom, the point I want to make here is that I'm a great believer in the flipped classroom. I'm a great believer in people learn by doing. And if you can give people, or you can challenge people, students, to be able to develop things themselves as a way of understanding. So you're talking about gamification of serious games. The best way to teach people about serious games is to get them to develop it. It doesn't have to use technology. And my friend Vinod is a master at developing, is using gamification, developing serious games, using non-technology outcomes. But for those who want to use technology, it's available and accessible and affordable now to make it practical within the use of a lot of classroom environments. So to summarize, AI is having a major impact on the creative industry and especially in games. And it does have the potential to unleash your creativity and imagination, because you can simply ask AI to create things for you based on your imagination. It will help to personalize games because it will be based on an understanding of player behavior and motivation, etc. And it will lead to high levels of competition. So you'll be seeing gamification used in non-game environments, particularly more in commercial environments, encouraging you to spend more money on things or to change your behaviors. It is happening already in social media and news environments, etc. But it will also make niche and short life games affordable. So that's the end of my presentation. And I'm sorry if I spent more than too much time on the theory and practice of gamification rather than talking about AI, but I felt it was important to cover that so you understand the theory behind and how AI can be used in practice. So I'm very happy to answer any questions. If you have any questions, if you can type them into the Q&A, that is actually better for me, because I'm in an environment here where people are likely to come out of the conference room at any time, so the background noise won't help me to hear you or for me to speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And now I would like to invite our panel members to please ask their questions if they have. I request all the participants to please ask questions, or you may write your question in the question and answer tab.
I have a question. I'm driving a car, so I cannot write it. So I hope it's okay for me to ask the question verbally. I'm very satisfied with a very interesting presentation in gamification and how it relates to real-world activities. Now, I also understand that the impact on AI on human cognitive abilities and the immersiveness of AI in life is a very powerful tool. Now, what I'm interested in knowing and learning more about is the methods how we can assist the users of this kind of AI games to know what is real world activity and what is game activity, because they will be blurring, and I think it would be of ethical health importance to know what is real and what is not. Thank you.
It's quite sometimes it's going to be increasingly difficult to be able to differentiate between what is real and what is not, because AI is becoming increasingly sophisticated, but the success of gamification and of serious games is on real world outcomes. I think that is the key point. This is what you are trying to achieve, whether it's an educational, whether it's a behavior change. The effectiveness of gamification and serious games will be based on real world outcomes. It won't be on virtual outcomes. And so AI in that sort of context is how you use AI to be able to measure the outcomes from whatever game activity it is. And I'm thinking particularly about how gamification is being used increasingly by commercial sales organizations as a way of influencing purchases. And I'll tell you about an example that I've had, say, unfortunately, experienced certainly over the last few weeks. And this is how a company in China called Temu, I don't know whether you have heard of them, but it is an e-commerce company that sells all manner of goods. It's a bit like Amazon. They sell everything, and so they advertise via social media, and they make extensive use of gamification to achieve real-world outcomes. And the real-world outcome, from their point of view, is you buying goods from them. And so they use AI and they use different gamification strategies and tactics to influence your behavior. So I show you that when I bought something from Temu because I saw an advert and I saw products there which were attractive. There's a dash cam. There are some solar powered lights and one or two things, and I realized that I could buy these. I could buy these at a much cheaper price than I could get anywhere else. And so I decided to try to buy them. Now, I use this gamification technique, incentives, a lower price, trying to, and it was about trying to develop a relationship with me as a consumer. So I placed an order and I received the goods, and I must admit that certainly with the dash cam and certainly with some of the solar powered lights, they were very good quality and I was very pleased with them. But from the time that I received these goods, every single day I sent messages that use different types of gamification strategies to persuade me to buy more. And those are offering incentives for me to buy, offering goods at ridiculously low prices. They use almost threats. They use gamification to say, if you don't buy something now, you're not going to be able to get it. So they're using my feedback, whether I respond or not, and how I respond, to adopt different gamification strategies. And I think this is an unethical use of gamification myself, because it is, but it is gamification, and it is based on the effect of real world outcomes. So when it comes to when you're talking about virtual world outcomes and real world outcomes, I mean, gamification, really, the measure of effectiveness has to be based on real world outcomes. You might use gamification with virtual worlds as a way of achieving real world outcomes. In other words, a virtual world outcome can influence a real world outcome. And I'll show you an example of that. You might have a health application which is designed to help you lose weight or become healthier. And I presume you've heard of Tamagotchi. Or Tamagotchis, this is going back some years, the Tamagotchi principle was that you had a virtual character that you had to look after. You had to, in the virtual environment, you had to feed it or give it the things that it needed, or it would lose its health. And so there are some health applications today that revolve around using virtual characters and showing how those virtual world characters are influenced by what's happened in the physical world. And so you might say that if you're trying to encourage somebody to lose weight, you give them an avatar which is overweight, and you use gamification to influence them exercise and the things that affect weight. But then you alter the appearance and health of the avatar to reflect what's happening in the real world. And that's a way of using gamification that links both the virtual outcomes and real world outcomes. I'm sorry, it's a long answer to your question. I hope it
Yes, thank you. It was very, very beautiful answer. I'm very happy with. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Great, thank you, sir. Is there any other question? Yes, sir. Vinod, sir, please.
David, I have made notes of what you spoke. I've kept a copy of the gamification model, elements, and influencers, and I hope to use them in the games that are designed and facilitate for other players. I'm especially going to be influenced by a very small model, which includes challenge responses, measurement, and feedback. I have a question. Has AI been used for those everyday games that you're so familiar with? Monopoly, Scrabble, Solitaire, Catan, and so on. Catan, I think it has been used.
Yes, I mean, all the games like this, board games like that. I mean, you can. It's not just related to the physical world. By the way, I will send you a copy of my white paper on gamification theory and practice, because it has all of this described in more detail. So that may be quite useful for you. But with games like Monopoly and also with games like the ones that you've used at the iSaga games, they have all of these elements, and the most important one is the challenge. You provide, whether it's a Monopoly or whether it's one of your games, you give either an individual or group of people, and team games are extremely important. You give them a challenge. You tell them what the desired outcome is, and you give them a set of tools and resources. And so rules are part of that. But the important thing is the challenge and the desired outcome. Those are the two key things. You tell people what they have to achieve, and you tell them what the rules are, but how well they are motivated and what they learn from that are more likely to be affected by the influencers. So the elements are separate from the influences. You in the design of your games, you've got a fantastic gift for being able to create these, put these elements together, rules, outcomes, all these things, And then, how interested people are and how well they play will depend on the influencers. And just to give an example, one of the influences is authority, right? And what I mean by authority is the status of the person who is the game's master in the eyes of the individuals. So a teacher will have an authority. A teacher is in a position in a classroom is they are in charge of that. So if a teacher tells you to do something like this as a student, then you're more likely to be motivated to do it than just a man coming off the street. Um, so authority is one example. And because you are an authority in serious games and because you have your personality, wonderful way of communicating with people, then when you tell people about a game and get them involved, they will see you as a figure of authority, and so they will be more positively inclined to start to play your game. And so, all of these things, aptitude, if you give somebody, even you, at your most persuasive, if you give somebody a game or a game challenge that they haven't got the ability to do, then the outcomes are going to be questionable. So you can think, if I will send you the white paper, but which gives in more detail about what each of these elements and what each of these influences with real world examples, and I hope that will help.
I have two more influencers for you.
Okay.
One is adversity.
Of what, sorry?
Adversity.
Adversity.
Yes.
Uh,
That means
well,
something
what,
bigger than what I can manage at this time. A
sorry,
problem.
say
Something
again.
that, something that is bigger than me at this time, something that I cannot conquer at this time, something that has hurt me, something that has pained me, something I need to rectify.
Adversity.
Yeah, something that's in the past.
Well, I think adversity is one of the most important factors in human motivation. Adversity is very strongly linked to a challenge, and it's adversity, I think, is one of the main reasons for the development of civilization. We have the most, I think, some of the most important positive impacts on humanity as a result of adversity. And I posted something on LinkedIn recently about a young man who suffered from adversity all his life. He's got cerebral palsy. He had a tremendous speech defect. So when people looked at him, he was wearing a skull cap and his body was twisted. And they assumed that he was unintelligent. And so they would talk to him like a baby. So he had tremendous adversity in his life, but it was adversity really that motivated him to do something about it and achieve an outcome. So I think adversity is quite an important influencer on a game situation. If you put somebody in a situation of adversity, but it's important that they have an ability or an option to overcome that adversity. If you use adversity where someone hasn't got a chance of achieving a desired outcome, then that's going to have a negative effect. So you need to use adversity in a very controlled way that the people involved at least have a chance of overcoming that. And it's noticeable to me that if you look at people, so tennis players, for example, some of the leading tennis players in the world their background. You look at Andy Murray, you look at Novak Djokovic. These are people who've had real severe adversity in their lives. They were born into poor neighborhoods. They were born into conflict situations. And that was actually one of the driving forces that led them to become at the top of their tree. And this is only given to, a minority of people. But if you give people the right level of adversity, the right level of challenge, that is something that they do have the resources and the ability to overcome, it can be have a positive impact on outcomes.
I don't want to hog the space, but I have a second influencer for you, and that is austerity.
Sorry, say again.
Austerity.
Hostility.
No, austerity. Another A. Austerity. Austerity.
AU.
ST.
Yeah. Austerity.
Yes.
Yeah. You mean like in a you mean like in a situation, the politics, like in the UK at the moment, a policy of austerity is designed to help the country to bring its finances back into order. Yeah. Okay. So I understand. That's my understanding of austerity. So we have that situation in the UK. Where our new Prime Minister is saying that he does not want to go back to austerity, but he's telling us that there's going to be some very hard decisions that are going to be made. So that what it was telling us is that in the UK we have something that the previous government implemented called the winter fuel allowance, which they brought in around COVID to help people, older people, pensioners, everybody who was over a certain age, so over the age of 70 or 65, would get a sum of money to help them pay for the fuel. Designed to overcome the problems of rising fuel costs. With the problems in the Ukraine and so on. All of these world problems were causing the price of fuel to go up. So they introduced the winter fuel. And the new government is saying, we need some tough decisions. So we're not going to pay the winter fuel allowance to everybody. It's going to be means tested. So this is influencing the behavior because it's saying to people, you're going to have some austerity. And so there is a response to that because certainly for a lot of pensioners who are on the borderline, who don't get means allowance or any special concessions, they are going to be £300 a year worse off. And so this triggers a response. And at the British Labour Party Congress, the trades unions, the unions are traditionally the backers of the Labour Party. The people, Labour Party is a party for the people and particularly poorer people, etc. And so they voted against this. And the voting is not binding. So the Prime Minister doesn't have an obligation to change his mind about the winter fuel allowance. But this is a form of gamification. It's a form of gamification where you're giving people a challenge, and the challenge is austerity or the prospect of austerity. And there's a response to it. So it is a game in its own. It's a game in its own right. Does the Prime Minister give in to the demands for reinstatement of the winter fuel policy in order to get more popular? Or does he decide that it's in the interests of the country that we need to balance our books? And so this is a gamification. You could say you could develop a political game where these kind of decisions are built into it. So you could be a game based around politics, where it's a role-playing game where you are the prime minister. It's like Monopoly, really. You're given a series of bits of paper money and what you can spend it on. And you make decisions, and those decisions will affect whether you are going to be appointed the next time, and whether people will rebel against you, whether there's going to be civil war. you know. So that's an example of use of austerity, or as an element in the games, or an influence of what people's response is going to be.
Thank you, David.
Oh, I'll just look in the Q&A just to see if there's any questions there.
Yes, sir. There are.
The first one is about gamification framework, which has incorporated the use of AI in evaluating the gamification models. Not that I'm aware of, though. I apologise if my knowledge of AI in evaluating gamifications is I've not actually come across anything like that, but all I can say is that AI is already being used to evaluate the success of a particular gamification strategy. So rather than the gamification model, it's a gamification strategy. AI, yes, can certainly monitor other AI's response. It depends on whether it's got access to the data. And I think that's all of the question that I'm going to. There is a feedback form, and please, be honest when you're filling in the feedback form. It's important to me to know whether you've gained something useful from what I've had to say to you, or whether I've been talking a load of nonsense. So I hope you've got something from it. And I already sent the copy of the gamification theory and practice to Jagyasu Dubey. So if anyone wants that, I will put my email address into the chat. And if you want to get a copy of this for yourselves, and please just send me an email, and I will get a copy sent off to you. Do we have any other questions? Yes, we do.
Hello?
Any challenges arising from serious games, challenges arising in serious games, how can they be dealt with? Well, there are challenges in serious games. I mean, you've got to differentiate between the use of challenges in serious games and whether serious games are a challenge in their own right. Yes, there are challenges in serious games because the main challenge is understanding whether the serious game is going to achieve the desired outcomes. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge of serious games, is when you're developing a serious game, it's very important that you begin by deciding what your desired outcomes are. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you a practical example of a serious game designed to engage students in workshops. And this is just a very simple thing. It uses playing cards that I can't remember the name of the playing cards, but they have different colours and different numbers on them. So a set of playing cards will have 4 different colours: yellow, red, green, blue, say, and each of the cards will have a number on them. And so there will be several cards with the number 1 on. There will be a number of cards with a different color. So this is an example of a serious game that's designed, and the objective of the serious game is to get people to communicate with each other, and to get placed in groups that they wouldn't normally naturally form themselves. So when people come into a workshop, what happens is that people go and sit with their friends. They go and sit with people they can identify with. And what you want as a tutor is to get different people every time. So one thing a teacher can do is every time they have a class or a workshop, they get the students to pick a card as they go into the classroom. So these cards will have different numbers and they will have different colors. And so each of the students will have a card, and the teacher can say, okay, I want everybody who's got the number 1 on their card, you get together in your groups. Everybody got number 2. Everybody got the same number, get into their groups. So they have to sit with people at random. So that's using gamification and some of the theory and practice in a practical way, because the objective is to get people talking to people they wouldn't normally do and bring together multiple types of different backgrounds and experiences. And you do it by introducing an element of chance. And the element of chance comes from the cards. They don't know what kind of card they're going to take. So you could begin by saying people with the same number, or you could say people with the same color. If you want bigger groups, you say people with the same color, and so you bring people together, and that is the use. That is the use of gamification with a specific outcome. The specific outcome is to make people do things that they wouldn't naturally do. In other words, they would sit down with people they wouldn't normally naturally sit down with. So in every kind of serious game, the key thing to begin with is, what do I want to achieve from the serious game? And then you need to link that challenge of what you want to get from the serious game into the mechanics and the psychology to do that. I mean, there are other ways of doing it, exactly the same thing. And what I've seen, some example is that when people go into the room, the tutor will say, okay, I want everyone to form a line, and I want you to form a line in the alphabetical order of your surname. So everybody, you got A from the left to Z on the right, and people form that line, and then you form them into groups based on their names. So it's just about being creative. And Vinod is one of the most creative people I know in designing games to do this kind of stuff. So he knows, and I know from experience of playing Vinod games, that he is very good at understanding what the outcomes that he's looking for from his game, and he designs games to achieve the outcome. So that's one of the main challenges I think, of serious games, is to decide on the outcome that you want to achieve and to link the game to the outcome.
Okay, so we have covered all the questions.
There's another question about theory of earthly dynamics. Are the representative advanced simulated games dynamics? I don't think I'm qualified to answer that question, basically. But what I would say is that basically life is a game. I think gamification is an essence of life, because we talk about difference between the physical world and the spiritual world. With the physical world and, say, physics and Newtonian mechanics and chemistry, all of the sciences revolve around understanding and being able to predict outcomes. So you need to know what happens when you roll a ball bearing across the table. And the physics and the dynamics you can't change, and the same with chemistry. The idea behind chemistry is that you're able to predict an outcome, whereas life is uncertain, and that's the difference between humans and machines. And you could not use gamification on machines, or certainly not AI machines, AI generated machines you could use gamification on, but it's human beings. And gamification is a part of our DNA, and it's a part of earthly dynamics. It is the difference between life and inanimate objects.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. David, for the enlightening and thought-provoking session on the interesting topic. And we deeply appreciate your valuable insights on the topic, and you have covered all the questions as well. So now I would like to invite Dr. Jigyasu Dubey, coordinator of the Center of Excellence in Simulation and Gaming, to deliver the words of thanks.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Modi. At the outset, our sincere gratitude to Mr. David Rodley, Vice President of the International Society of Digital Medicine and founder and CEO of 360 and 360 Immersive Society Experiences, United Kingdom, for accepting our invitation to conduct the 62nd webinar of the series Pratiti Becoming Aware. In this session, David presented transformative influences of AI on gamification and serious games. However, there are issues like ethical considerations and challenges such as data privacy and algorithmic bias associated with the AI in gaming. We are also thankful to the HISAGA for their collaboration and support. We extend our sincere gratitude to Dr. Upinder Dhar, Honorable Vice Chancellor of the University, and Dr. Santosh Dhar, Rector and Dean, for their continuous guidance and encouragement. Our sincere thanks to the panelists, Dr. Nenfo, Vinodji, and all other panelists who are present, and also attendees and participants who make this webinar successful. I'm also thankful to Dr. Rupali Bharti and all the members of our team, Center of Excellence in Simulation Gaming, as well as IT team of the university for their kind support. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think it's at the conference that I'm in. They're just having their coffee break now. So your timing is perfect, and I just want to say thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And I say, if anyone wants a copy of the theory behind at least gamification and serious games, and I'm more than happy to send it to you. Thank you, and I wish you every success in the future. It's been an honour and a privilege to talk to you, and nice to speak to my friend Vinod again. It's been a long time since I've spoken to him. Thank you, and goodbye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, David. Good to see you after a very long time.
Thank you. Hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, all the participants and panel members. And I would like to request all the participants to please fill the feedback form as mentioned in the chat box for getting e-certificate. And stay tuned for more exciting webinars on gaming and simulation in the Pratiti 2024 series. Have a great day. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
All the way. Thank you. All the best.